Okay, I believe we're back. So today, like I said, we will be talking about nature versus nurture. Now, nature versus nurture is a relatively simple psychological concept, but it's not a concept. It's a debate. So it's two concepts, and it's two things that people have fought back and forth with um, over the course of basically the entire time that psychology has been a something to debate about. So what the idea is that nature versus nurture. So I'll split it up. So nature, the first one is it's what you're born with. So nature is the genetic properties, the characteristics, and the physical traits that you're born with, and how that applies to influence your behavior. And so that's what this whole debate is about. That's it. The debate is about behavior. And nurture, on the other hand, is what you learn over the course of your life and how you are influenced by the environment that you are brought up. So, nature is, so just to recap, nature is the genetic and what you're born with, and nurture is what you are brought up with and how that affects it. So, this is a heated debate because there is not much agreement on what is the cause of people's behavior. There are some people that take the more pessimistic view that everything is out of our control and everything is down to nature. So, and I don't mean pessimistic in a bad way. I just mean that it's something where there is a there's a faction of people that believe that life is not really in our control. That everything we do is based off of our genetic makeup and how and the different characteristics we got from our parents. So basically, what it means is that we can only ever be what our parents are. So that means that that's the whole idea of like a when a dad beats a son, then that son tends to beat his children, and this is a problem that persists throughout generations. But there are people that break the cycle, but then the nature argument for these breaks in the cycle is that the other parent's characteristics are influencing the new generation. So if you introduce a parent that is not violent and their parents were not violent, then you can break the cycle purely based off of genetics. And this also brings up the fact that so if you are playing by a strictly nature ideology, then a person can never truly change, no matter how much you counsel them and how much you teach them about the flaws in their ways. They will always be the same person on the inside and will always revert back to those instincts. So, nurture, on the other hand, is what I like to say the more optimistic view, not necessarily that it's better of a view, but that it gives hope. So, the nurture view is the ideology that people are a blank slate when they're born. They take on whatever they are basically sponges of their environment. So what happens is if someone is brought up in a good environment, no matter who their parents were and what kind of people they were, they will become good people. And if they are brought up in a bad environment, they will become bad people. So this comes into play when we look at people who are being raised in low income neighborhoods. So there is there's always the idea that it doesn't matter if your parents are good people if you are growing up in a less fortunate neighborhood, then you are more prone to absorbing those bad tendencies of drug culture and gang culture and all of these different quote unquote bad qualities of a person. So basically, the nurture side is that um, it gives hope because it also says that people have the ability to change later on in life after birth. So the nurture side of it says that you are in control, or at least that the environment is in control of you. It doesn't necessarily say that you are destined to be any specific person. So what this hope brings is the idea that someone can leave their environment if the environment is being malicious to their behavioral influence, and they can improve themselves by surrounding themselves with better behaviored uh, role models. So this is something that is often applied in these low income neighborhoods. So people will um, they will find a role model to strive for, and they will also people who are role models of these good behavioral concepts will um, will come into these neighborhoods and these environments and try to show that there is an environment greater than that outside that they can strive to enter. So this nurture idea is somewhat more optimistic because of that hope factor, but there is a dark side to it. So this ideology also insinuates that there is the possibility of being vulnerable to the environment. So this goes down to the ideas of Pavlov. So if you know anything about Pavlov, you know that he is not a friend of PETA, and that's PETA the organization, not the character from the Hunger Games. But basically, Pavlov had a bunch of experiments with dogs that went along the lines of basically saying that any organism can be trained to uh, to respond to a stimulus, and that stimulus doesn't have to be related to what the response is. So basically, what he trained these dogs to do is he trained them to salivate at the sound of a bell, and whenever that bell was rung. So the way he did that was because he would ring the bell every time he was feeding them, and when it would get to the point that he wouldn't even have to feed them. He would just have to ring the bell, and they would start salivating because they would subconsciously take on the idea that they were going to be fed, even if after a long period of time they had not been fed from the bell. Now, you may say that's dogs. Dogs are easily trained, but the human subconscious is a very vulnerable. I don't know how to describe that as a physical form. So, the human subconscious is very vulnerable. So that means that if someone wanted to manipulate people, they could create an environment that would enforce behaviors and reward behaviors that benefited them, so that those people would get closer and closer to their ideal of a person. And this was seen somewhat in this is seen somewhat in cult culture. So when people are rewarded for supporting these cult leaders, then they almost become entranced, and they believe that that is the new normal for them, even if the ideas of the cult leader are crazy, and any person in normal society would immediately throw them out. If someone is isolated from the social media and from media in general, so they're not getting any input from the outside world, their behavior and their ideology is extremely vulnerable to whatever information they are receiving. And remember, this is just the nurture ideology. So the nurture ideology also brings up the idea that there are an innumerable amount of possibilities for your behavior, um, whereas the nature side of the argument claims that there is only one destined behavior for you, and everything has been decided just based off of your genetics when you were born. So this is something that is been debated because there is decent evidence for both cases. And so what I tend to view as the compromise for this whole argument is the idea that when you are born, nature defines a threshold for you. So let's say, I have my paint window up here. Let's say that you have the when you're born, this is your behavior right here. So let's put a scale of behavior. So we'll make green up here, that's a good behavior, and we'll put red down here, and that's a bad behavior. So then, so let's just say from nature, from your genetics, you are put right here in the middle. So what I'm saying that nature provides you with is a threshold. So I'm going to grab a square here and put it like that. So let's say that, and this may start looking like a box and whisker plot, but just remember, this is psychology, not statistics. So let's say you are born right into this middle slot here, and this yellow box is your threshold. So if so then that is your range of possibility, and it's somewhat like well, I'll get to that in a second. So this is your range of possibility, and then after you're born, that's when nurture kicks in. So nurture is the idea that the environment can enhance or depress your behavioral your behavior in general. So let's say that you are someone who is born into a good neighborhood and is relatively, and your parents put you into a bunch of clubs, and you get to know people who are outgoing and have good status in society and are just general good citizens. Then you can move up here in this threshold, and you could even reach this maximum threshold. So let's say you become, but the thing is that with nature creating this threshold, there is a maximum of that threshold. So that means that there's one point where you become the best person you can be. But that doesn't mean you're necessarily the best person that anyone can be. So if someone, just based off of their genetics, is born with a starting point right here, and they have a similar threshold, we'll grab our square again, then you can see that because of this, because of nature starting them out at a higher point, then I didn't mean to change that color. Then they have a higher potential for being a good person. But they can also be a worse person because this threshold goes lower than the maximum of the of person one's number. So I'm going to number this 1 and 2 for convenience. So if person 2 is in a bad neighborhood and doesn't surround him or herself with an environment that is healthy and helps provide a better role model for their standing in society, then they can move down this scale and they can come down to this bottom threshold. So what I'm saying is that when with this idea of nature defining who you are and genetics encapsulating your range of possibility, this doesn't mean that someone can be born and automatically be better than you. Well, maybe at the point in time that they are born, they are slightly better than you as a person, but babies don't necessarily provide too much insight and generosity into society. They can't move, they can't talk. So just based off of your environment, you can become a better person. And also remember, it's not a competition. If you are a good person and someone else is a good person, that doesn't necessarily, and someone else just does more charity than you. I mean, competing to do the most charity isn't necessarily a bad thing, so I wouldn't be putting that down. But charity and being a good person is just something that you should do. It's not something that you need to do and you should be the best at. But this whole idea is that there is a aspect of that hope, and so you have the ability to change yourself just based off of surrounding yourself with a better environment, but you also have to understand that are you are weighed down by what your genetics allow you to be. So the way I like to think about it is I don't think about it. I think, how can I make myself a better person? And so I don't try to compare myself to other people. And this may be the normal spiel for this whole idea, but I don't try to compare myself to other people, because then I am caught up in whether my nature is better than their nature. But the thing is, if I put myself in the best environment I can, then I can improve myself, and that's all that matters. Is that you have to be the best person that you can be, so that you can help society in ways that the world hasn't seen before. So that is the whole basic idea of nature versus nurture. And so this is a heated debate, but the way I view it is this compromised version, because I believe that both have merit and both have evidence, and so I probably should say some of that evidence. So what I'll get a blank slate here. So there are very specific cases that show both sides of the argument. So and one of the best types of cases are twin cases. So twin cases are when you get people who are identical twins and they were put up for adoption because their parents weren't in a situation to take care of them. So what happens is, sometimes when twins are put up for adoption, it's very hard to have twins adopted, because a lot of families, when they come to adopt a child, they're just looking to adopt one child. So it's hard for adoption agencies to keep both of the twins together. And so what happens is, there are a lot of cases that psychologists are able to study on the idea that so what you get is, you get two people who are basically identical, have the exact same nature because they're identical twins, but they are raised in two different environments. So what happens is, you can, over the years, compare the behavioral traits and and things like IQ, to see if the environment they were raised in has made them different people, or if they are more likely to be close to each other. So there have been cases that have supported both situations. So what happens, and what I don't have any exact numbers to quote here, but so let's say that one of the twins is picked up by a rich family, and they are put into the best schools, and they get the best food, and um, they get a lot of good treatment. They're around good people. Then these people, on tendency, have a higher IQ, and I don't know why I drew the arrow like that. They have a higher IQ. They tend to be healthier. Um, they tend to do better in school, and all these things. So and they tend to be better socially. So just social health and mental health. These people tend to do better as a whole. But what happens is when so then you have the other twin who doesn't get the same treatment. They are picked up by a family who maybe wasn't prepared to take care of a child, and they and their upbringing and the parents' upbringing has brought them to be maybe not the most caring parents. So then these children grow up to have slightly less IQs than their counterpart, slightly lower IQs, and they tend to be less healthy in terms of physical and mental health. But the curious fact is, the curious idea is that these numbers aren't so far away from each other. So yes, there is a positive correlation, or there is a correlation with the idea that these people who have positive upbringings have better statistics in terms of, and I know it's hard to put statistics on knowledge and mental health, but in a overall analysis of their well-being, these people who are brought up, these twins who are brought up in a better environment tend to be more apt for society than their less fortunate counterparts. But if you take two twins who were whose birth parents were better people per se, and were more intelligent and healthier people, then and compare them to two twins that their parents were not so fortunate, and that was the reason that they had to be put up for adoption, or maybe, then that's when we see the nature kick in, because although these twins have differences in their statistics and in their well-being, they are in a better standing. So the ones whose birth parents were better people tend to be better people in comparison to their counterparts, or in comparison to a set of twins that were born from parents who were not that great of people. So this idea of a threshold gives hope for people, because that means that they can change themselves and they can become better people. But it also brings up the idea that you are more prone to be what your parents are. So whether that's a good thing is for you to decide. And what you can do with knowing that knowledge is you can look at the aspects of your parents and you can decide, okay, that's something that I want to be part of me. And if you see something that your parents do that you don't personally like, then you can focus on avoiding that behavior. Because what I like to, because the way I like to look at psychology, and the reason that I love learning about psychology, is that if you know different psychological tendencies, then you can either allow them or stamp them out. So it's the whole idea of a magic trick is only impressive if you don't know what's going on. So if you know the inner workings behind psychology, then you can better enforce and reward yourself in order to make yourself a better person in general. So that's the idea that I live by, and that's something that I strongly encourage in people. Um, so that is the general idea. I'll give a quick summary. So nature is the behavioral aspects that are hard coded into your DNA. They are the genetic attributes that you obtain from your parents and from how you were born. And then nurture is the ideology that you can change who you are and you can be changed by the environment. Um, and the environment is role models, is physical environment. So if you're living in safety, in warmth, in good health, then these are all aspects that influence who you are, and even the country that you live in. Because I'm not saying that one country is better than the other, but there are different cultural aspects that come along with different countries. So these aspects may be maybe whether or not you're more of a individual person or whether you like to work in groups. These are tendencies that tend to be seen throughout different cultures, whereas Western cultures tend to be more individualistic, and Eastern cultures like China, for instance, tend to be more group-minded, so they don't want to stand out. But it's not that they don't want to stand out. It's just that it's almost offensive in a sense for some people for people to not go with the flow of society. So these are all aspects that are seen in everyday, and if you do see these in everyday and you want to discuss them, the comment section is open to your bidding. But for now, seeing as I don't see any questions up on my screen, I will be moving on to the last section of the stream, which is the normal section that I've been doing on the Saturday streams, where I illustrate a random topic that I generate with my sheet of random words. So I will be playing a short ad while I get that set up, so I will be right back.